Hi, this is PR Frank, and today I'm going to show you how to take a tattered old image that's discolored like this and create a beautiful retouch of it with no wrinkles, blemishes, or bad color, and even how to straighten it. So we'll use a few tools in Photoshop. Tools we'll use include the crop tool, the spot healing brush, the clone stamp tool, as well as the patch tool. So let's start taking a look at what we need to do. First, let's start with this image here. It's a before image that's provided with this lesson. First, we're going to use the crop tool to crop and straighten it with a 2/3 ratio. So if you select the crop tool, you've got lots of different ratios with which to change or crop your image. And here's your 2/3 or 4/6 ratio. Automatically puts a rule of thirds diagram on it, which is great. And to straighten it, we could either rotate the corners a little bit or use the straighten tool. It's embedded here in the options bar of the crop tool. If you click on straighten and then draw a line visually across the top of where the image should be, then it automatically rotates it to be straight along that horizon. Then I can take the corners and just move them in a little bit to eliminate that white edge there, and also to eliminate the tattered corner down there. We'll deal with the lower left corner and the upper left corner later using different tools. So I go ahead and accept my change. Now I've cropped it to a 2/3 ratio. Now what we'll do, we want to make sure that most of what we do with this image is non-destructive. We want to be able to always get back to our original image. So we use a new layer, and we'll rename that new layer Spot Healing Brush, because that's what we're going to use first. We're going to use the Spot Healing Brush. And here is the Spot Healing Brush. It looks like a Band-Aid. There's another brush called the Healing Brush. The Spot Healing Brush works really well for smaller areas. So let's look at some areas with which the Spot Healing Brush will work. By the way, if you were working on a layer above your original layer, you want to make sure in your options bar that Sample All Layers is on. If you don't have Sample All Layers on, it's just going to sample from the layer that you've created, which is empty, and it won't produce any results. So let me zoom way in on this image, and let's look around for some areas that Spot Healing Brush will work very well in. I can reduce the size of my brush by using the left bracket key right next to the P key. Also, the Healing Brush has a hardness and softness slider that you may want to mess with if you want to really blend it well. Lower hardness works well there. All I want to do is come down and just be right around this blemish here and click once. When I do that, it samples from the area around it. It didn't do a very good job that time. Let me try to redo it. There, let's try to widen our sample area. That does a better job. The other thing you can do with the Spot Healing Brush, besides single clicking in an area, is to drag and click. So here there's a line on the photo. If I click and drag across there, it'll repair it quite nicely. So I can continue doing that in areas that are really where there is open space around it. Like maybe here along her nose might work. There we go. On her cheek. There we go. I'm going to stay away from the nose and the teeth because we're going to use another tool for that. It needs to be more precise. But I'm just going through, and you'll see every once in a while it samples from the wrong area. It sampled from her nostril, which is not right. So I can immediately undo that and try again. That did a better job. And as we move around the photo, we can find other things for which we can use the Spot Healing Brush to get rid of some blemishes. I'll go around this image and use the Spot Healing Brush a few more times. Okay, there we go. So now we've touched up some areas that are spotty and where the Spot Healing Brush is used well. Now what we're going to do is we're going to fill one of our wrinkles with the Content Aware fill. So here's a wrinkle that's on the photo, and using Content Aware, we have to A, select the original layer, B, select some sort of selection tool. I'm just going to use the lasso tool, and I can just draw around this area that's a wrinkled, ugly area and make a selection. And then what I can do is I can go to Edit, Fill, and then choose for contents, Content Aware. And what that'll do is it'll sample from pixels around that area and replace it. And usually does a pretty good job. Let's see. There, we got a few blemishes left over there. It's sampled from here in the shirt, but that's okay. We can even do it again. Fill, Content Aware. And it didn't really do a great job. So I can deselect and once again just get my spot healing brush, go to my spot healing brush layer and clean that up. There we go. I just want to show you what the spot healing brush layer is doing real quick. If I turn off my bottom layer, you can see all the areas that I've repaired are in this spot healing brush layer. So it's non-destructive. I can turn it on and off, get back to my original image. Okay. Let's go ahead and try to use another new layer, and we'll use the clone stamp tool this time. So new layer, I'll name this layer clone stamp tool. And this time I'll come down here to the tool that looks like a stamp. And the clone stamp tool works differently. What the clone stamp tool requires you to do is sample from an area that's good, such as this part of her lip. And to sample, I'm going to hold down the Alt or Option key and click once. When I do that, it loads the brush, and you can see the preview of the brush with pixels from that area. And I'll remind you again, in the options bar, since I'm on another layer, I need to make sure that all layers is sampled. All right, so now I'm going to click and drag in this area, and you notice as soon as I start clicking and dragging, it paints pixels, and this little plus sign follows my brush around. That plus sign is the area from which these pixels are being sampled. So it took pixels from here and put them here. So if I want to fix this area in her nose, I should sample from the area next to the bad area, slide over, and I can click and I can drag around there if I want, and it does a nice job. Here's a little area here. In modern era, it would be a nice nose piercing, but I bet in her age and time, nose piercings were out of the question. Okay, so you just have to play around and make sure you get the right amount of shadow and highlights to make it look good and not make, you don't want to really make it look terrible. You can make an image look more terrible if you don't carefully use these tools. Let's go ahead and sample. Now here's another technique. So here, this area, there's a blemish on the photo, and right above it on her, between her cheek and her hair, there's an area we can sample. So we'll sample halfway between her cheek and her hair like that. Click Alt, or rather Alt click. And as we move down, you see it nicely replaces that with a very similar set of pixels from right above it. It makes it look good. So we can do the same thing in her teeth here. We want to Alt click right in between these two teeth. And as we move over between these two teeth and paint a little bit, it can make it look like it's teeth. Okay, same thing on her lip. And sometimes I just sample and resample until it looks right. Here again, along her jawline, there's some more examples. I'll go around with the clone stamp tool and finish up this image. Okay, I want to show you another technique that is used when you use the clone stamp tool. It's a good idea to sample close to the area that you want to repair, because the pixels here you see are much darker than the pixels up here. And if I do that, I can click, or rather Alt click to sample, and then move right over it near it and move along that area, painting pixels pretty well. You're kind of off track there, but it helps to match the pixels nicely. And I can just resample, start over, and follow that path along. So here, I'm going to alt click right below this blemish, move up to it, and just follow right along. It's a good idea to just run right next to it. And then most of the time your pixels and your texture will stay the same, allowing you to have a really nice sample. So there we go. She's cleaned up very nicely from using the combination of spot healing brush and clone stamp tool. We also used content aware fill to eliminate some areas. Now let's go ahead and take a look at the patch tool. The patch tool is going to help us fix these corners. The patch tool, once again, works by selecting the original layer, selecting an area. I'm going to use the lasso tool. And I go right outside the borders there. It creates a nice selection. And if I go to the patch tool, which is buried beneath the spot healing brush tool, I can just click and drag that to another area of the image, like that. And it does a pretty good job of estimating what that corner looks like. And we can do the same with the bottom corner. All right, so we've got some discoloration there, but that's okay because we can use the tools that we have used before, such as the spot healing brush or the clone stamp tool, to blend that color in. Let's show you how it's done. Clone stamp tool, here's that clone stamp. I'm going to go ahead and select some pixels from here by alt clicking and make my brush hardness super soft. And then I'll just come in here and I'll start painting those pixels into the corner. So there we go. We have a pretty well healed image there. The only other thing that's wrong with it is that she has this off color look. And so what we'll do is we'll add a couple of adjustment layers to adjust that. First of all, we're going to do our levels adjustment. Our levels adjustment is the second adjustment layer in the adjustments panel. And it gives us a histogram. The histogram tells us this is the number of black pixels, this is the number of white pixels, and this is the number of gray. So this is our white point, black point, gray point. So that's what our histogram tells us. So there's a lot of darker pixels there, hardly any white ones. And there are 3 eyedroppers. These eyedroppers can help us to set the white balance. So if we click on black and click on something that should have been black in the picture, like maybe the darkest shadow inside of her hair, then use the white one to click on something that was probably white in the picture, such as her teeth. Ooh, improvement. And then the gray one to click on something that's a middle gray, like here in the shadow of her sweater. Okay, so it does a nice job, and you can see the before and after of this by turning on and off the visibility of the levels adjustment layer. Okay, and what it does is it adjusts the pixels for all the layers beneath it. All right, one more issue, and you can still see there are some yellowy areas there. What we can do now is, now that we have a nice levels adjustment to get most of the white balance correct, we can add the black and white adjustment layer. And that just gives us a straight black and white layer. It eliminates all color, and you can choose from the presets to decide which preset you like for the black and white. Some of them will be better than others. So I'll settle here on the green filter just for the purposes of this tutorial. If you wish to have more fun by painting this image, you can get a reference photo and you can paint her skin, a nice skin tone, and her lips, a nice red. Choose a color for her eyes and her hair and her sweater, and colorize that photo. I hope you enjoyed this tutorial on retouching photos, and I hope it helps you in the future when someone asks you to provide this skill for them.